Good vibes are on the way.
I love the feel-good stories.
Oh, there'll be sarcasm mixed in, but that just adds to her charm.
So great. I love listening.
Welcome to Erin O'Malley's Feel Good Frequency.
Hi, welcome back to Erin O'Malley's Feel Good Frequency. I'm Erin. It's great to have you here. I met my next guest at one of the most difficult points of my life. My husband and I were so stressed out because our little boy, maybe 5 months after he was born, started having these crazy seizures like we'd never seen before, never heard of before. And we took him into Boston Children's Hospital. And that is when we met Dr. Patel, who is an epileptologist. And at the time, she may have been a fellow because she went through, of course, got her bachelor's, then she got a master's, then she went to med school, residency, fellowship. I mean, the woman is so well educated, and we're really grateful that she is in basically our backyard. She is still our son's doctor to this day. And wait till you hear the wonderful difference that she is making globally to help out kiddos who otherwise would not be making any progress, would not be getting medicines, would not even have a neurologist to be able to see. I am so impressed with this woman. And the more I talk to her and the more I research the things that she's done, the more I feel completely blessed that she stayed in Boston instead of going somewhere else. Because believe you me, anyone would be so lucky to have Dr. Patel be part of their staff or run a department, because she's one of the most intelligent humans I've ever known. And she's also one of the coolest. So, Dr. Archana Patel, I have never actually said your first name. Did I say it correctly?
Close. It's Urchana.
Urchana. Oh, I love that pronunciation. Well, hello, Dr. Patel. I'll just stick with that because that's what I've called you for the last almost 13 years. You are one of our son's doctors. You're his epileptologist, and you work out of Boston Children's Hospital. We met you at a time where husband and I were both in just a really bad place because we were so concerned with our boy who had a massive stroke during birth and fought to be here, and then a couple months later started these awful infantile spasms, but these seizures. And you were one of the first people that told us about them. And you're probably not going to remember this, but one of the things you told me still sticks with me to this day. And you said, don't Google it. Do you remember saying that?
I don't, but I'm not surprised. Everyone wants, we all do our own research on these things and we want to know what to expect and what it means. But when every child is different, right? And so you can't necessarily figure that out yourself. And that's what we're there to do, is to help you sort some of that information out. So there are, reputable sources. We all Google things, but it's something that I'm not surprised that I would say, although I met you when I was very young in my career. I was still finishing training actually when I met you guys. And so I am happy that I said that to you then, but I don't remember it specifically.
You so did. And you always had just an amazing bedside manner about you. You still do. We say that we feel like we've grown up together because, like you said, we met when you were just really getting into everything. And gosh, you're so knowledgeable. And anybody who had never heard of infantile spasms, just to give you a little bit of background, people say they're kind of called mind erasers is what the generic term for it is, because so many kids that get them end up regressing back to birth, and some of them forget who their parents are. So we lived that way for a good 7 months before he had brain surgery, and thankfully, knock on wood, all gone. But that was such a difficult time in our lives, and your bedside manner, even though you were so new to all of it, wow, you were a saving grace for us. We knew we could call you or email you or reach out at any time, and you always had such knowledgeable answers, but you have this amazing way about you where you don't give false hope, which I don't know if they teach you how to do that, but you've mastered it because you don't go too far one way or another. And I love that about you.
I mean, that means a lot to me. I can't tell you because that's what we strive to do. We can learn the medicine, we can learn the techniques and how to diagnose and how to manage and do our best there. But every day, I mean, as you said, I met you when I was still, very early in my career. But every day, every time I meet patients and their caregivers, I learn from them about this, like how to be good about how to handle this. You learn from the patients and their caregivers telling you just this kind of feedback, like what it means, right? It is a really big challenge to how to give a realistic perspective, not give false hope, but also not give an absence of hope. I mean, I wouldn't do what I do if it wasn't for the fact that children like your own are amazing and they grow up differently, but they're amazing in their own way. And I love seeing that. But it's very rewarding sometimes on this side when I get to see you guys through the whole path. And it's like an honor to be part of the families and take them through the path. But it is oh so challenging at the beginning because you know that they're going to get there eventually.
Yeah.
But to get them there in that initial piece, as you well know, it's a really tough time. And you have to, as a physician, reset each time to remember, like, they haven't done this before.
Right.
They don't know what to expect. And it's changing every aspect of your life in that moment.
It's so incredible to me. Now, there are lots of parts of the human body that I feel like are way easier to comprehend, remember, deal with. You went for the hardest from the beginning. Why study the brain? What made you do that versus a different kind of medicine?
Oh, I mean, it's just the coolest. It does everything. It's what I tell all the kids when I talk to kids about this, is that I don't understand why everyone doesn't study the brain. It's fascinating to me. I mean, so as a kid, I always thought I would be a doctor. Like that was kind of like one of those things. I don't come from a family of doctors. I was the first in my family, but it was just one of those things I was interested in. But then when I, got to college and you find out there's so many other things you can do, the thing I actually like gravitated towards was psychology. And it just fits that. Ultimately, I wanted to do medical care, and neurology was a really good fit, pediatric neurology specifically, because children's brains are fascinating, what they can recover from, how they recover, and just what the brain can do is just an amazing field to be in. It also, in my opinion, is one of the most exciting medical fields because all my cardiology friends will hate me, but even when I was in med school, I felt like cardiology, we already kind of knew how the heart worked and the exciting stuff had already been done. Whereas the brain, like we're still really figuring it out. And in my own career, I've already seen so many advancements that it's just really an exciting field. So for me, it seems very natural.
I remember saying to you early on in these spasms when, no medicine was working for Gabe, I said, can't he just get brain surgery? And you said, wow, most parents don't jump straight to the brain surgery. And I said, I just know what Boston Children's Hospital can do. Do you do like brain transplants? And you said, you know what? Not yet. Not yet. Maybe someday, but not yet. And I even thought, wow, there is so much about the brain that we have no idea about. So that must be, from a doctor's point of view, kind of exciting. Like, what's going to happen next? What are you going to figure out and maybe cure, solve, find a different avenue for in the brain versus something else? Because like you said, with the heart, we kind of understand that whole package, but the brain is just so different.
It is. And I mean, I think in medicine, in all fields, but particularly neurology, you're seeing, I mean, you saw how much can still be accomplished with a very extensive brain surgery. I mean, I don't think people usually realize how much can be accomplished and how well you can still recover. And I also think, from that time to now, the advancements we've had in surgical procedures, particularly in epilepsy surgery, have grown already. Like they've grown a lot since even when you guys went through it. So it's just amazing to see where we're going and the advances we're making and the hope that we potentially can continue to give, because there is still such a large proportion of children with epilepsy who really need better care. And we are struggling every day to try to figure out ways to improve that.
And that actually brings me to another piece of your just incredible puzzle and all that you do. You are an assistant professor of neurology for Harvard Medical School.
Yes.
You are a child neurologist, pediatric epileptologist, but you also make sure that kiddos in different countries are finding ways to get medicine. And I think this is so awesome. It's one of the things that made me so badly want to have you on the podcast, because you really are making not just people here, kids here, but the world a better place. Was it in 2014 that you first started going to Africa?
2012, actually, when I was still in
2012.
training. Yeah, and that was for neurology. So I actually went for the first time to do medical rotations when I was in college. So my mom is originally from Kenya. My father's from India. Both parents are Indian. And so I was fortunate enough to have experiences in both countries growing up. And then when I was doing my pre-med rotations in college, we were spending the summer with my grandfather in Nairobi. So I decided to do them there. And that's actually where my interest in public health and international work, global health, really came to be because, that was 2000. It was really when HIV was hitting a very high peak in Africa.
Yeah.
And you could see the clinicians there just being phenomenal. They really found ways to ask about things that were the entire caring experience, not just the initial illness, but also like trying to sort out like what their risks were in a culturally sensitive way. And they were very good about it. And it was just very interesting to me. And I really realized, the hospitals I was in were ones that my grandparents had been in. And if my parents hadn't come to the US, they're, the hospitals, both the ones I saw in Nairobi then and later on in India, would have been ones that I would have maybe had to go to. And both countries now have great advanced care, but the resources have been, they're definitely on the lower end at times and they've been building. And it's just by where you are that you have the fortune of getting some good medical care. I think that's somewhat of a travesty. I think particularly children deserve good care wherever they're at. When you're facing a hard medical condition, you want to be able to have the resources at your fingertips, and everyone deserves to at least have some avenue towards those. And so that really just became a huge interest to me. I really wanted to find ways to improve access for kids.
Have you gone every year to a different country to try to help out?
Yeah, so since 2012, except for COVID, and even then I think it was only an 11-month reprieve, I've been to somewhere on the continent at least once, if not multiple times, usually multiple times. My primary sites of work are in Zambia, but I also work in Rwanda, and I previously have worked in Tanzania. So I've been very fortunate to have partnerships in different places.
Kenya too, right?
Kenya is where I did rotations when I was in college, but I haven't specifically worked there since as a neurologist.
As I started doing research before chatting with you here, I'm going, oh my gosh, she does this too. Because I know that there are several months of the year where we cannot get an appointment with Dr. Patel because she is off helping other people in Africa, which I think is spectacular. But I was always like, I need to find out more about this because it's such a big deal. It's not like you just did it once. You are now the Director of Global Neurology at Boston Children's Hospital, which is incredible. And you're on the global health faculty as well. Was this all you pushing it, or did they already have something in place and you're like, I have to be part of it?
So I was very fortunate. The global health program in pediatrics was building as I was in my training. So I was able to be connected to people with similar interests, which has since grown. And then in neurology, there really wasn't anyone doing this work in specifically this way. And I was very interested in doing it. And as a resident, I went to my residency program director and the leadership in the program and said, this is what I'm interested in. And they said, okay, well, give it a go. Find some people and go ahead and try to, work out your work schedule and you can do it. So I did that and I found partners on the ground. And that's the big thing. If you find good partners on the ground who want to work with you and you want to work with them, then you can take it off. So that was where the magic kind of came, where I found really great partners. And then I got very fortunate when I was signing on as faculty after training. I hadn't actually intended to stay in Boston, but my boss at the time said, this is interesting. Not quite sure how it's going to go, but you should give it a go. And he gave me the freedom to really try to build a program. And since then, every year I have trainees who come with me. I mean, it's grown so much because there's a huge interest. Like people really want to do this kind of work. They just don't know how to a lot of the time.
Right. Yeah, I've talked to different doctors throughout my life that have said that they love the whole idea of, Doctors Without Borders and things like this, where you can go to underprivileged countries and places where, even war-torn places where people need help. They just don't know how to actually start it or be part of it. And I love that you got kind of on the ground floor of this.
Lots of people along the way who believed in me and gave me, ways to build that. And so I've been very fortunate. But It was. And I think it's also really important to recognize that neurology and specialists often are feeling like they can't do that. So even when I was in my training years, I was told, like, if you're really interested in doing international work, maybe you should be doing, general pediatrics or emergency medicine, something that's more helpful on the ground. And to me, there is a need for specialists of all fields, and particularly for child neurology, which has so few specialists around the world, around even the country. And so there's really a need to build that and to learn how to advocate for neurological needs for children through public health mechanisms, to learn how to, build capacity, even if you don't have that many specialists on the ground and that much technology. And so that's been, both incredibly rewarding, of course, but also just a really interesting place to build my career in, because it's just there's so many novel and fascinating ways to do that work.
Well, whoever the boss is that had you stay in Boston, I feel like I need to start sending him monthly checks because we're very happy you're still here. I was reading about this. So in Zambia, you helped develop a pediatric neurology training program for the first child neurologist there. How did you
Yeah.
do that?
So that was a huge effort. And I have to, give a shout out to Deanna Saylor, who moved out to Zambia after she finished her neurology training. She's an adult neurologist at UNC now. She was at Hopkins at the time. And she went out there, and through a collaboration of several of us who work in Zambia, including people from Rochester and other institutions at Harvard, we had been working there for a while, and a neurology training program was envisioned. And those guys, actually on the adult medicine side, built it. They got it through the university, and they decided, should we include pediatrics? And we had pediatric trainees who were really interested. At the time, I was working with an expat neurologist in pediatrics in Zambia, and that was really all we had. And so we said, yes, like, can you include our colleagues here? Can you include our trainees? And they did, but they needed someone to help lead the pediatric portion of it. So that was the role I had. And I just got to work with these two amazing ladies who are very, very good friends of mine now, who took it on, and they took the challenge, and they became the first child neurologist in the country, and are continuing the work, which is really great.
And it seems like now there's a way for them to get the medicine where they live instead of trying to figure out how to get it from a different city, a different village. Epileptology is so interesting to me because I never thought about how in other countries that aren't as developed as we are, there's still this stigma. They don't understand it, and they're thinking that these kids are, there's something wrong with them, that they're put to the side and not even allowed really in schools because of this. And now this is allowing kids to have regular lives.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of work to be done. There's definitely a stigma with epilepsy everywhere, but particularly in lower resource countries, and then particularly in specific countries that have a lot of poor understanding of what causes the disease. And part of that is not having clinicians who are actually explaining to them what causes the disease, right? If you're not told it's a brain disorder, if you're not told you need to take the medicine twice daily for the rest of your life, potentially, you might think of it as any other medication that most people get, which is like antibiotics for 7 days, and then they stop it, and not understanding. And particularly if you don't have the medication, or you get the wrong dose, so if you're not trained properly on what to be given, then it doesn't work. And then you go back to believing the myths around what you think causes it, because you're not getting treatment that seems to be working anyway. So they're saying it's medical, but it's not fixed. So there's lots of reasons I think that the stigma and these myths persist in these areas. And part of the core of that is poor access to care. And that's combined from people who know how to manage it and what to give. And for kids, that's even trickier, because it's, kids are not just the one size fits all, obviously. And then more than that, it's actually having the medication supplies, and then working on the stigma and the inclusion of the kids into activities and doing things and showing how much they can do. So there's so many different levels of it. And, as little as 10, 15 years ago when I started out, there were still kids that, and I'm sure this still exists, but we've made improvements, where you see kids tied up and, as you said, put aside and just hidden. And that was just, it's not acceptable. It's not what we want to see, especially for something that is very much a treatable condition in the majority of the time.
Yeah.
And so that's been, that's the push. So that's what we've been doing in many different levels, and trying to do that. it still is a challenge. The shortages still exist for medications. And so we're working on that from many different levels on how can we get medication supplies to the kids who need it, and how can we make sure they don't run out, and how do we make sure, we've been fortunate that we've had medication donations, we've had people actually advocating within the country, so we've had better supplies, but there's still a lot of shortages. And how do you still expand that? Because they can come to the capital city, but that geographic barrier you talked about is huge.
Right.
In the time that I've been working, I've expanded from working from the hospital, the main hospital, to all the rural areas. And I've learned so much more by seeing how they're living, how they get to the hospital that's nearest, and then much less the place that has the medicine. And when you take it all together, it can be very overwhelming. But when you break it down in pieces, you can move forward.
As you were saying that, I was thinking, gosh, this is such a huge undertaking. It is so overwhelming. But that's, once again, the way you are with your bedside manner. If you break it up, like you said, piece by piece, you're making such a great difference. If you could have anything, what would the thing be? Would it be like more funding? Do you get funding publicly? Is it something that a private donor could come and help? Like, what would be the most helpful thing for you and that country right now?
I get both, grant funding to do research, and then some private donor funding so some philanthropic funding to do smaller projects, which has been incredible. And usually it's from people who have had kids with epilepsy, often kids that they've lost, and they've chosen to turn that loss into something that's amazing and have taught me so much from doing that. So I've been fortunate in that. And the thing I would want most is funding for what seems to be, it's just not sexy. Like the stuff that doesn't get a lot of the funding is actually getting the community health workers to the families and telling them, hey, this is a medical issue, come into the clinic, we'll give you treatment. It's getting the medications to them. It's actually doing the advocacy part of it. Those things are not as exciting as discovering the latest technology, which is what tends to be research funded, which is also, I'm an academic. It's very interesting and I like studying that. But the stuff on the ground that just is, I don't want to say it's an easy fix, but it could be fixed with with actually quite little investment. And that's what I dream of, is seeing that getting fixed that way.
Is it something that you can help out on? Or is it something that if somebody came to you and said, I want to donate money to make sure that there are cars and gas and, funding for the medicine that these kids need, would people come to you? Or is there an organization that you work with that people would donate to? How does that work?
So normally it's been coming through myself. So again, it's been a few philanthropic projects, but usually what they do is that they'll reach out to me and then I'll be the coordinator for it. And I'm more than happy to donate my time on that kind of work, because what it is we want to try to funnel the money as directly as possible to the need. So we don't want it to be going through any kind of organizational structure that's maybe going to take more of the money to just have that. And if we're going to build an organizational structure, I want it built in country. I want it built by Zambia, run by Zambians, because that's the only way to have a lasting impact, right? Nothing I'm doing do I want to be dependent on me. It should still go after me. And so that's always the goal. But to get it there, I have learned I need to be the one helping move it along. It's just very hard to get it there otherwise. So I'm often coordinating little pieces. And then that also allows me to make sure that the trainings, the education, the treatment of the children specifically is done in a way that I think is a good standard of care, which is what I care about. So
do you oversee things from here? Do people call you, doctors call you with questions here that are over there?
All the time. Yeah. So I definitely, my colleagues on the ground there, we work very closely together. And so I certainly am available for teaching and running cases by. I help read EEGs remotely. So mentorship, all of that, the things that, again, we need to keep building the capacity there. But until we get that done, that's what we're here to do. That.
God, when do you sleep? That is impressive. I'm telling you, oh my gosh, that is crazy. Why kids? Why did you decide to focus on kids for neurology and epilepsy instead of adults?
I decided kids before I decided anything else. I loved working with kids, and I also think medicine it's amazing to watch it change, right? So the way that kids develop and grow and the way that their brains develop and grow from 0 to 18 is just an amazing path to see. I also wanted a field in which I wanted to be a specialist. I didn't really have a strong interest in general medicine, but I love that piece of general medicine in which you're kind of with the family and you watch them grow and you're part of that unit. And I think pediatric neurology gives you that
Oh,
as
yeah.
a specialist. I think we can speak to that. And so,
Definitely.
and as a result, I get to see kids like your son grow. And it's just, I get a lot out of what I do. I want to be very clear. Like, I love what I do. I am happy to give time to what I do, but there is a wholly selfish component of how rewarding it is for me. And that's part of it is watching the kids grow and watching them, accomplish all these things and seeing how things change over time and just the science of it. I mean, I just find pediatric medicine fascinating.
Of all of the work that you've done in Africa, what has been the most fulfilling moment so far for you?
Having two child neurologists in Zambia, and we have a child neurologist about to graduate from a Kenyan training program to go back to Rwanda and be the first one there. So
Oh,
the two countries that I've been working in now have child neurologists, and I feel like if I've done nothing else, helping support that is huge.
that gave me chills. That is incredible. Look at the difference you're making. I love that. So, do you go back there the same time every year? And how many months are you over there?
So I go back, it depends on the years. In the last few years, I've been going 3 to 4 times a year, shorter trips, but I'm trying to, it always adjusts with my life here. So it just depends on what's needed. I'll be going back in November. So this is actually, I haven't been there since May. So it feels like a pretty long stretch. And I usually stay anywhere from 2 weeks to several months, just depending on what needs to be done. Again, oftentimes now it's getting to be shorter trips because we have more capacity on the ground, which is great. But I also love going, it's like, it's just part of my soul to want to be there. So I feel a need to be there several times a year.
And how exciting that not only do you get to see kiddos here from very young ages as they're growing up and the differences in their lives, but also these kids who really, I'm sure, didn't have a lot of hope along with their parents there. And then you get to see them as they're getting older and having a life that they would not have likely had without you. That has got to feel so amazing.
It's yeah, I don't really have the words to explain how much it means. Whenever any parent tells me what a difference it's made, and I don't I don't particularly think I'm offering anything unique or special, but it's something so rewarding to know that like just by taking the time to see you and your child and to get them on the treatment that I think is appropriate, it can make a huge difference. And oftentimes, it's a pretty simple change. It's just one that someone hasn't taken the time to do yet. And so that's why it's so important to me that we empower people to have that ability to take that time and make those changes because there's so many more kids who need to be helped.
And look how many doctors you're getting over there too. That's huge. You said that you have people that you bring there with you too. Do any of them go by themselves, like how you're going to go? Do any of them go when you're not there to help out, or how does that work?
So I've been fortunate to have lots of colleagues who I've also recruited globally to help teach in our programs because again, we have very few people on the ground. So we ask people to come out and teach and help, and the volunteers for that have been phenomenal. I've also had a lot of trainees come out because they've had an interest in doing this, and they are also fantastic. They'll go by themselves after they've graduated. A lot of them stay involved in whatever way that their career allows. So some of them read remotely for us for the EEGs. Others do a lot of remote teaching for the programs. I mean, there's so many, as you alluded to, there's so many different ways this has grown in the last over a decade now that I can't do it all. And so all of these folks are doing different offshoots of it, which is just amazing to see. Remotely teaching for med schools and the pediatric residents in Rwanda, and then creating educational programs for our colleagues in Zambia, helping with clinical research on the ground, just amazing ways that they all get involved. So it's been great.
Can you tell me just a quick story of a child over there? Obviously, no names or anything, but a child over there that you saw that you ended up getting medicine for that now is living a totally different life.
There's one that sticks in my mind because they actually email me on occasion, which is just really great. This is a patient from Rwanda, actually. I went out to Rwanda to just help teach because, again, they have had no child neurologist. So there was a program called Human Resources for Health that was in place, and a lot of people from Boston Children's and other US hospitals were going to teach. And so I did that as part of my first year on faculty. And I met a family who had this young boy who had infantile spasms. There was no clear reason for it, which is a lot of infantile spasms. And oftentimes those kids can recover and do well. And he was showing the regression. And they didn't have a standardized protocol at that time. So we initiated high dose steroids, which is the standard of care. And he had his spasms completely resolved, has had no further seizures. He has mild autism, but I get videos of him walking, talking, doing well. And so that's, that's an incredible difference to see being made. And to also, when it's seen, they now, most of the clinicians I've worked with there know to do high dose steroids for infantile spasms and they implement the protocol appropriately, which is great.
Yeah, that is great. So I wouldn't know what to do without your teachings and showing them. And I love that. Really, you're like no doctor I've ever known. So I thank you so much for all the wonderful help you've given us through the years, but also taking your time and your amazing efforts and your intelligence and helping kids around the world. It is inspiring and you are making the world a better place. And I'm so grateful to know you.
Oh, well, thank you. And thanks for your podcast. I've been making my way through so much of it. And I just love that you're doing this because it's just, it makes me so happy to listen to it. And, we all need that.
Thank you. I feel like we need the positive, like we're fed the negative enough. And there are so many great people like you that are making a difference. It's like, why wouldn't we highlight that? That seems way better to me. So,
well, it's great. And I'm very honored to be here. So thank you.
Thank you. Didn't I tell you were going to love her? She is incredible. I love how much she wants to help. I also love how she said, you can't look at the big picture because what she is trying to accomplish, she is starting from square one, really, and just trying to get neurologists that can help out kids in a country that hasn't had them. So the difference she's already making, the way that these kids are getting help and finally being treated like humans instead of, like she said, just hidden somewhere because they're different. And what's so infuriating is it's something that's pretty easy to fix in general. Epilepsy is very common, and we have medicines for it, for all kinds of different seizures and disorders. So to know that these kids in Africa could have been living so much easier lives and been able to go to school and that kind of thing, but just didn't have somebody to get them the medicine or even to diagnose them. And now they're getting it. How fantastic is that? I'm so excited to see all of the good she is going to do in the future and the difference that she just continues to make. I am so proud to know her, and I'm so thankful to have some of her time because it is really precious. She is spreading herself very thin, but she loves it. And she recently got married, which I didn't even get to chat about, but congratulations on that. And she said her husband is fantastic and is able to do things remotely. So when she goes to Africa, a lot of times he can come with her. So she gets all of that support as well. And I know all those kiddos and parents forever grateful for all you're doing to help them. I know that we are. If you know somebody that would be terrific on the podcast, please let me know. I am looking for people who are making the world a better place because they're everywhere and they are who we need on platforms right now. It's ErinO'Malley'sFrequency.com. That is my website. You can email me there. I'll get right back to you and hopefully we can get you on. Have a wonderful week. Thank you so much for being here. Bye.